Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Affiliated Advisors Continuing Planning Why Take Chances. My name is Tom Rippberger. I'm a managing partner at Affiliated Advisors. I've been in the business for about 25 years. I started out as an attorney at a large firm, moved to an RIA firm, and then I've kind of moved into owning my own business. I have an advisory firm, and then I have, I'm a managing partner and an OSJ. Our mission at Affiliated Advisors is to help advisors build the businesses of their dreams while serving their clients with integrity, creativity, and compassion. We started doing a series of webinars probably 2-3 months ago as COVID got started. One was just to kind of, contribute back to the community that's given us so much. So the first one we did is just what it takes to run a great virtual meeting, which is how to do Zoom. I'm following most of the tips, but it was more our marketing person who did that. And if you want to know how to do a Zoom seminar or seminar with other things and how to look good, contact us. We'd be happy to share those things. The second one was on more emotional intelligence and what's going on today, which was kind of getting advisors excited about going back to doing business. And then today we're going to talk about continuation planning, continuing partner, and then dig a little bit in a succession plan. So these seminars are really designed to be 15-20 minutes of practical tips that you can take back and think through. What we found is for the first several weeks, everyone was in a bit of a state of shock. There were a lot of client meetings going on. There was a lot of conversations with clients. But then as things kind of wore on, advisors were having some free time to think about their practice. And so we started putting these together so that advisors, when they're thinking about maybe implementing the next phase of their career, maybe we're trying to give you some practical things to think about as you're doing it. My background as being an attorney, it means that whenever there's a deal going on, people involve me because I'm going to have some good perspectives on it. I've bought 2 practices myself, the smallest one being a $30,000 generating firm, second one being quite a bit bigger than that. And then I've been on a team that's bought, $2 billion RIAs. So I've seen kind of the gamut, and then I've helped a lot of advisors in between. I've spoken on some panels about succession planning and buying practices. But today is really about, first and foremost, just getting a deal and trying to motivate you to immediately put a plan in place. So if anything happens to you, your spouse would at least have some revenue for a couple of years. So that's the conversation to start. We're going to start out about continuing partner and getting someone in place. The second part of today, we'll talk about continuing planning. So what are some things you can do to immediately make your practice easier for someone to take over if anything happens to you? And then 2, to build it so it's maybe 1, more marketable, worth more for when you get into a long-term succession plan. And we'll do that more as giving you a couple practical examples of things we've seen to think like, okay, that could happen to me. So the first question we have is, do you have a business will? Those of us in the business, we're CFPs, we sit down with our clients, we start out doing a financial plan. When we're done, we ask them about their estate planning documents. Do they have a will? Most times they don't, just like most people don't have, some type of healthcare directive. And so you ask them in the first meeting, it's no. You ask them in the second meeting, it's no. By the third meeting, they maybe take the card of a lawyer you would refer them to. And maybe by the 5th meeting, they met that person, they've done it. And generally when they walk in and they do that, there's a sense of relief that they have their documents in a row. And while you didn't do it and you didn't have to do the work, they're really grateful that you pushed them to doing it. And that, in our practice, that's been our response. So for those of you out there in your own practice, if you don't have a plan in place for someone to take over your practice, you can send me an email and I'll be happy to send you, monthly reminders of did you get it done. So what happens to your practice? What's the triggering event? Well, do you know what happens if there's a death, disability, if there's a regulatory suspension? Those are all triggering events that may limit you from, handing your practice off to somebody else. Kind of the biggest sticking point here is FINRA Rule 2040 says that if you don't have a contract in place, before you lose your registration or before that triggering event. So if you die and you don't have an agreement in place with somebody, your broker-dealer can't pay your spouse. And so most advisors, their biggest piece on their net worth statement of their family balance sheet is their practice. And there's lots of ways you can think about that, but if that, your biggest asset isn't going to be something that your spouse is going to drive income from or money from in the future, that's not a good spot to be in. So we really want to motivate you to just go get something done today. And at some BDs, it's easier said than done. So one of the things I want to motivate, just go get an emergency partner today. And I think a lot of people would say, well, that would be impossible. I have to find the right person. I have to think through who to do it. The reality is that several broker-dealers have what is called a continuing agreement. Ours does. You fill out a form. It's 2 pages. It maybe takes 10 minutes. And then we send that off to a department. They send back the legal contract. Talk to the people who've developed those contracts, and they've made them about as easy to get implemented as you possibly can. They've also taken out a lot of the nuance in them, and we'll talk about that later. Definitely you can get nuance, but today what we're saying is get something in place, so something that happens to you in the next 14 days that your spouse would get paid, right? So get a default contract if your broker-dealer has one. Who can you do that with? Right, you can do it with your OSJ. Our OSJ, where we're at, we have a template contract for all of our advisors. We offer them X% over a number of years so that if anything happens, we can take over the business and pay their spouse. Now, we'll try to find another advisor to use it later on, but now they have a peace of mind and they can spend the time going to preparing their practice and finding someone else. Find a friend. We all have friends in the industry. If a junior advisor, maybe just put that in place. And you don't have to wait. You can put this in place and then later on unwind it, right? So don't think up front of doing a full-fledged legal contract. Don't do that. It will make your mind spin and you'll never get it done. Find the default contract and then just put that into place. The reason you need a default contract is there's a lot of the rules that require also require there to be certain things in that contract. So if you have a lawyer you use to do contracts, they're not in the securities industry, they're not in the BD, they're not in the RIA world. They're probably going to take a long time, to come and do all the research. It's going to cost you $10,000 to $15,000 to get a basic contract in place. So use the BD agreement if they have one. If they don't, find an SEC or a BD attorney, and if if you send me an email, there's a couple that we've used in the past. At least they're a lot closer to getting it done, so they don't have to charge you to do all the research. The key things, though, is if you go outside and there isn't a BD contract, you hire a lawyer, make sure you send it to your BD and ask them, will they honor the agreement? If you have a buy-sell in place, get that up to your BD to make sure they'll honor that agreement. Get your broker-dealer to review it and say, yes, they will. There are specific terms on the BD world that need to be on there, and there are very specific terms on the RIA about how you can set the parameters to reprice it that could make it invalid if you don't have them done correctly. So the biggest thing we'd say is don't overcomplicate the continuing agreement. Just get a default one, get it in place, don't overthink it. And then you'll have a bit of a peace of mind. Think about a term life insurance contract versus whole life. Just get it done, get it in place, and then start doing the thoughts and what you want to do to hand it off to somebody else or identifying somebody. It's very hard to identify someone to take over your practice or someone to buy your practice. So just one, do the first thing up front, get your spouse taken care of, and now, make sure that you do it later. And I would say just in the deals that I've done, I put together an agreement to buy a firm for $200,000. We did it in 3 days. Now that's crazy, but it's gone just well. And I've also spent time where we spent $50,000, $60,000 on an attorney to put together an agreement, and that went south 2 years in. Ended up having to spend a bunch more money to get out of it. So, it can be done easy if you let it. So just the continuing agreement, don't think that's your final solution. Just do that one. Don't overcomplicate it. Have that be step one. Go get that one done next week. And then now think, okay, what is the next steps in this process? So the next thing to think about is just continuing planning, right? Some things you want to think about when you're doing this. Who's going to open the door to your office? Who will pay your staff? How will they access your computer? Who's going to look at your emails that come in from your clients? Do they have the schedule of RMDs? Do they know when they're supposed to do distributions? Where's your mail go to? Not everybody's mail goes to their office. Maybe it goes to an OSJ or, post office. So you want to make sure that somebody knows how to do all this stuff. Who's going to pay your bills? Where do they get paid to? And those of us who in the northern, where's your heat bill getting paid? The rent. So just make sure these things, you're starting to document and thinking through these things. So a couple really simple basic steps to make your practice so that the next person can take it over. Use a password manager. I've used actually 3 of the 4 on here. They're all fine. How that works is I have one password that logs into a very safe and encrypted system. It's more safe than having, notes laying around your desk where someone could walk in and get them all. And then my partner in the business has access to that. And then our support staff persons have access to that. So they can log in and get into our financial planning tool, get into the CRM. And then if you have a continuing partner, if something would happen to me, all you'd have to do is get your partner or your staff person to give them another login. They would log on and have access to your stuff, and they can at least get access to finding stuff and helping your clients out. Second thing is cloud storage. If you're using your C drive on your computer, I would just stop using that today. It's very cheap to use one of these services on here. I've used several of them. I'm using one now today. We have 7 people. It costs us $8 a month for the backup. And it's just a shared drive on the internet. And the best way to think about this is when I drop my phone in the lake, right? I'm not worried. I mean, it's a very expensive mistake and you hate it, but you go to the Apple store, you go to your local, phone company, you get a new computer, you log into your Apple password and all your stuff downloads onto your Apple, on your phone. For me, it's Apple, and I'm able to go back to doing business right away. And that's what that's as simple as I say for your things on your drive. If you have paper files, just get them organized. Make sure someone has the key. Obviously, everyone has them locked up somewhere. Make sure there's a key. So some things to think about to make it kind of easier. Did you have a business continuation plan? If you did those things and maybe didn't give it a lot of thought, or you did them 2-3 years ago and you gave them a lot of thought, go grab those documents. They're going to have some of the things you need to incorporate into kind of a continuing planning process. So like business inventory, what are all the computers you use? If your business is like my personal life, I've got a computer here that is my work computer. I've got, I looked around the other day and there's 4 or 5 laptops that no one uses. There's several computers, but it's just in your business, have the computers that you have, who uses them, where they're kept. And definitely if you have laptops, you want to make sure you're tracking that. And then use kind of this vital resources information. Where's your business charter? If you're incorporated, make sure those documents are somewhere. Put them on that shared drive and make sure someone knows where to go in and get all this stuff, right? So, some other things just to think about. Who's your accountant, right? Everyone's got tax documents or renewals on a yearly basis. Get those things on just a schedule or on a spreadsheet. These are all the things that need to be done in your business so that someone can take it over and run it easily. So, some of you might be thinking like, well, it's not going to happen to me, but we all know someone this has happened to. I'll just give you 3 examples that have happened to us. We had a terminally ill advisor. We were able to kind of put the deal together in a week. But then there was a snag because the buyer didn't have a Series 65. And obviously a big part of buying that practice was the advisory assets. Now, in that case, we were lucky. The purchasing advisor had a junior advisor who had the Series 65, so we were able to transfer those accounts till the purchasing advisor bought it. Just things you want to look at when you're looking at setting up even a temporary or a full-time agreement. I would say in the temporary agreement, just get it done. Another one, when an advisor dies without a deal, the home office and the LSJ split the revenue because the rules prohibit them from paying the spouse. You would like to think there's a workaround, and I think a lot of people do, but it's very, very difficult to get around those rules. So, that's, I guess, for lack of a better term, a threat and a reminder, like, don't be that person. Another one where one of our advisors, his friend was barred from the industry. It was not a client issue. It happened to do with the business. They ran outside of it, but the buyer didn't have a Series 7. Same thing with insurance revenue. If you want to bring over the practice, obviously you want to make sure you continue servicing the clients to pay the spouse. But you want to actually have to bring in revenue to do that. So insurance, you want to make sure you have the same insurance licenses, carrier appointments. Because if you're not writing insurance with a specific carrier, writing new insurance, sometimes they won't let you get appointed, and then you're not able to, get the revenue from them. So just look through those things when you're digging in. Then the last thing I would say, so now you've got your continuing partner, you have the simple contract done, you have the default contract, you've done some things to your practice to make it easier for someone to step in, and start thinking through, like, who do I really want to take over my practice long term? What are the cultural things about me, myself, my clients that I also want the purchaser to have? And they may not be the same as the person who, is doing your continuing partner, your default agreement. So one of the most important things from all the deals that I've been involved with is, does the seller, are they really willing to sell? And what that really means is, are they really willing to retire? A lot of times they think they want to retire, but as you kind of lead through the process, they start to say, like, oh, I don't want you to do this, new advisor, I don't want you to do that. And what you're seeing is that there's all these emotional ties that they're putting on the buyer, where if they're really retired and they're really done, the things they're talking about wouldn't be important. So it's very important to gauge, do they really want to sell? Do they really want to retire? And then if you're a seller, when you're looking at a buyer, are they financially capable? And if they're not, are you willing to finance it for them? And that can actually be a very self-financing, can be a really good deal for both sides. But, it's just something you want to ask that question, and then ask yourself, are you willing to do that, finance it? So some final thoughts, and then if there's any questions, I'd be happy to ask questions at the end. So the most important thing, perfect is the enemy of good. You want to perfect it, you're never going to get it done. So just get something done that's good, slap it up on the wall, get the contract done, make sure everybody knows it is, and then go try to be perfect. And it may take you a year or two to get to perfect, but at least along the way, you have something done already. We've worked for several advisors on acquisitions. They're messy. They involve a lot of emotions. So, get a coach when you move beyond the continuing agreement and you're moving into the next phases. Maybe get someone or find someone who's done deals, reach out to them. A lot of people in this industry share. I'm happy to share if you want to talk to me and just say, Tom, what are the things you see? Or I've found a partner, but these are things I think that are important. Are these deal killers? I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. And then the last, if you wait until the non-death triggers, you're going to be negotiating at a significant disadvantage. So you want to get these things in place so that you can get the most out of your practice. So with that, Tricia, I'll just pause if there are any questions. And if there's not, thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, we have one question actually, and the question is about having an associate planner be a continuity partner. Is that the right option for that person's business, or should they look outside of their own team?
Well, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but I think to get it set up, just get one in place up front. If that's the first person, because that's much easier to get in place right away. To start, but that does not have to be the person who does it long term. And that could be somebody else, but just be transparent with the people who work for you along the way, what you're doing. It's much more important to be open and honest and have regular continued dialogue than it is to kind of maybe go seek out a buyer elsewhere. Let them know you're doing it. And maybe that can be a little dangerous, but I think long-term, everyone would be better off if everyone's open about what their plans are. And for you as the seller, be clear when you're doing the continuing agreement, say this is short-term and we can build this into a long-term agreement that works for both of us a little bit more. These are the things I need to do as the buyer, and these are things you need to do as the buyer, and things I need to do as a seller, so that we can have a succession plan, a full-fledged succession plan going forward. But I would say for the continuing agreement, just get it in place. Long-term, that does not have to be the same person. Hopefully that answers your questions. If you have any additional questions or just want to have a conversation about this, please give me a call or reach out to me at the email there. And stay safe. Keep social distancing, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you very much.